All right, let's move on to other news. And there's mounting anger, frustration among the Israelis following the announcement of the death of 6 hostages in Gaza. Massive protests erupted across the country after the bodies were recovered from a tunnel in the city of Rafah. Crowds, about 500,000 strong, demonstrated in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv and other cities, demanding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do more to bring home the remaining 101 hostages. Now, police clashed with protesters during a massive rally in Tel Aviv by tens of thousands of Israelis standing in solidarity with the families of hostages. They have blocked traffic on the Ayalon highway. Now, horse-mounted police have been called in to clear the crowd in Jerusalem. Protesters have surrounded the Prime Minister's residence as well. The bodies of hostages have been returned to Israel, and the Israeli Health Ministry spokesperson, citing forensic reports, said that they were murdered by Hamas terrorists in a number of shots at close range, 48 to 72 hours before their bodies were recovered.
There are still 101 hostages being held. 6 were alive last week, from what I understand, at least up until 48 hours before they were executed in captivity. So I hold everyone accountable, him, along with every stakeholder in the negotiation process.
It catches all those responsible.
In recent days, as Israel has been holding intensive negotiations with the mediator in a supreme effort to reach a deal, Hamas is continuing to steadfastly refuse all the proposals. Even worse, at the exact same time it murdered 6 of our hostages. Whoever murders hostages does not want a deal.
This after reports quoted a senior Hamas official as saying that Israel, in its refusal to sign a ceasefire agreement, was to blame for the deaths. Hamas's Sami Abu Zuhri said the Israelis should choose between Netanyahu and the deal. Meanwhile, to build pressure on Netanyahu, the head of Israel's biggest labor union has called for a general strike. The one-day general strike called by Arnon Bar David, the head of the Histadrist Union, is being backed by Israel's main manufacturers and entrepreneurs in the high-tech sector. And our correspondent Jody Cohen tells us more about the general strike called by the labor union to push for a hostage deal.
So I'm at one of the 15 protests that have been planned for across the country on Monday. You can see behind me protesters are blocking the streets and the police are trying to clear them now. There's also a general strike on Monday. Schools are only partially open. The majority of bus companies and banks, although you can see some buses here trying to get through on the streets, but they have said that they're striking along with many high-tech companies. Ben Gurion Airport is partly striking and hospitals are working at weekend capacity. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu was under pressure to agree to Hamas's demands and get at least the women, children, the sick and the elderly hostages back. But there's not uniform agreement on this. For example, 8 local authorities are joining in the strike. 7 councils are partly striking, reportedly as a symbolic gesture, and at least 14 councils are refusing to participate in the strike. That's because many believe that if Israel agrees to Hamas's demands, the next day Hamas would start planning the next massacre and kidnapping of Israelis, and they believe you can't do business with terrorists. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has reportedly apologised to the families of the murdered hostages for failing to agree a deal in time to save them. He said that his government would continue trying to reach a deal, but believes that those who murder hostages are not interested in finalising a deal.
And well, what are the chances of Israel and Hamas striking a hostage for ceasefire deal? We spoke to Jody for this as well.
Israel's new UN ambassador Danny Danon has called for an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss the hostages. He said that the council has yet to condemn Hamas for taking the hostages and that they need to act decisively. He reiterated that Israel has accepted the proposals developed by the US, Egypt and Qatar, and that Hamas is continuing to refuse them. Now, President Biden and Vice President Harris are set to meet with negotiators on Monday, reportedly to discuss a take-it-or-leave-it final proposal. Now, a US official has said that Hamas's execution of the 6 hostages casts doubt on Hamas's seriousness about a deal. 3 of those hostages were believed to have been due to be released as part of a deal, and the official said that negotiators would now have to painstakingly renegotiate which hostages would be released and to renegotiate the details of a deal. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu has called for a strong reaction to Hamas's execution of the 6 hostages. He said to prevent more murders of hostages.
Now, some of the protesters at marches and rallies held in Tel Aviv spoke to WION, stressing their demand that a deal to release the hostages was long overdue and that the pain had gone on for too long.
We are here because this war has gone too long.
And I'm here to show solidarity with the families of the hostages and to tell our government that we all feel that it's about time to make a deal and bring them home.
I think that Israel is a marvelous, it's a beautiful democracy, and everyone has the right to manifest, of course. We can't imagine the pain from the parents, the hostages. This is terrible, but I personally think that if Israel give that the terrorists are asking, this will happen again and again and again.
Our government doesn't do enough for save them. If Netanyahu was planned to do something, it won't happen. But it's because of him and only him that what happened. That's why the hostages are die and not come home.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.